And here we are live with Emily Harman. So this is part of the author interview series. We're live on Amazon. We're also live on YouTube and LinkedIn. But for the best experience, type in motivationallistener.live. Come on over to Amazon, type in the chat, connect up with Emily, and let's find out what's going on in her world and about this book. I'm excited about this one because it's collaborative, and I am all about collaboration. So Emily, welcome. And
thank you, Scott. I'm really excited to be here. This is my first time doing something on a book. So
yeah, this is great. Well, congratulations. So let everyone know who you are, and we'll go from there.
Okay, just a little bit about me. I worked for the Navy for 38 years when you add in my time at college and time as a naval officer, as well as time as a civilian in the Department of the Navy. And I retired in May of 2019. And in that job, my last job, I was the director of the Office of Small Business Programs for the Navy and the Marine Corps, which was I was responsible to set policy for the Navy and Marine Corps on how we could maximize opportunities for small businesses to participate in our procurements, and advise the Secretary of the Navy and his staff on all things small business. So that was a really fun job. When I turned 56, that was my minimum retirement age, and I decided to retire in May of 2019. I had a lot of tough times in my life, being a single parent, working hard. I tended to have push energy back then, just pushing, work forward, working hard, to get stuff done. And I knew that I wasn't feeling my feelings. And I knew that I wanted to have more time with my parents and family. And I knew that I wanted to have deeper conversations. I just felt like I was so busy. And I knew that when I retired, that would all happen it would just be easy. And it wasn't. I realized that I have a really tough boss, and her name is Emily. And so I worked a lot with coaches. I figured that when I was retired, I would slow down, and I figured that it would just happen naturally. And it really didn't. I have a pretty strong hyperachiever saboteur in my mind that tells me, achieve this, and then you're going to be happy. And then I achieve it. And it's like, go for that. And I kind of woke up and realized that there's more to life than that.
It's interesting. I love that you're talking about having deeper conversations, because research shows that people that have deep conversations as opposed to shallow conversations are happier people.
Well, I'm happier. Maybe that's why, because now I host my podcast, and I've met so many different people, and I've met so many people through LinkedIn, especially during COVID, and I've just so blessed with all the people I've met. Russ Hedge is one, you had Russ in your intro video there. I've really enjoyed meeting all of you all, and just leading a completely different life, because when I retired, everyone told me what I should do. You should be a government contracting consultant. You should do this, you should do that. And I was like, wait a second, I want to figure out what I want to do. And my
Yeah.
dreams had become buried under a mound of responsibilities. I didn't even know who I was anymore.
I love it. My daughter, when she was graduating from high school and getting ready to decide what was next, college or a job, or what was going to be, what was she going to do? Of course, everybody has an opinion,
Yes.
and they wanted to share it with her. And my only advice to her, I said, Bethany, be wary of advice that comes from people who don't have to live with the consequences.
Yeah, that's really good advice. That's really good advice.
'Cause everyone's
Especially
gonna
for a
tell
dad to
Emily
give
that.
his daughter,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it could be you go to college and make some money. So whatever. And I would say now figure out what you love and
Yeah.
do it. You can make pretty much now with the internet and all the things that are available, you can make a living doing what you love.
Yeah. Yeah, what I told her was, because she did go into college, she wasn't really sure what she wanted to do, and I told her, I said, "I don't really care, how many times you change your major or what your grades are, as long as they're good enough to not get kicked out."
Right.
But the main thing for the university life, and this is really what you've experienced over the last year here, was it's about the relationships that you build
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
that community.
Yes, for sure. Definitely. I've really enjoyed that through my podcast, through meeting people on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
COVID hit, so it was hard to get out and meet people, but I'm really looking forward to getting out. I like to hike. So doing meetups and getting out and going
Mm.
hiking more is something that I look forward to do in the spring.
Yeah.
I've got a scheduled trip. It's going to be delayed 2 years. By 2022, it'll have been 2 years, but I'm going to be
Oh,
going
my.
to hike the Inca Trail at Machu Picchu. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay. Well,
Mhm.
that's a huge photo op right there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I've had friends that have gone there, and I've been jealous of all of the photographs, and the experience. And I would think that with your background too, you would really be able to appreciate the engineering that it took
Yeah.
to build Machu Picchu, and that it didn't wash down the mountain after one of those
Yeah.
years.
That is amazing.
They knew what the heck they were doing there.
Mhm. Yeah. That's for sure.
So when you're talking about your job in the Navy, and for all of the Navy, for all of the Marine Corps, advising the top folks, that's a lot of responsibility for any human.
It was. We spent about 16 billion a year with small businesses just as prime contractors, not as subcontractors, and
Mhm.
close to over 80 billion a year total. So we bought airplanes, we bought submarines, we bought ships, and but
Yeah.
there are opportunities for small businesses to contribute, especially in the innovative area. We have a
Mhm.
small business innovation research program, and small businesses are the ones that are agile, innovative. Some of the bigger companies are just as burdensome in their bureaucracy as the government is. So small
Right.
businesses bring a different dimension to it, and
Mhm.
sometimes you have to help them out a little bit because they don't have the resources that these large
Right.
companies have yet, in terms of finding opportunities. And that's what my team did. We had
Mhm.
small business professionals all over the country that were responsible for meeting with small businesses and going to conferences and speaking, and then helping connect them to the government customer that might need to buy what they're selling,
Mhm.
supplies or services. So
Right. And that's not the easy way. The easier way would be just find the big guys and let them do it. But one of the things that I saw in COVID really advanced or accelerated what was already happening, but it also emphasized certain features, like the really big players, the really big businesses. They had enough resources, and they could just lay people off and weather this COVID storm, the pandemic storm.
right.
Um, the medium-sized companies, they didn't have those kind of resources, so they suffered. But the small businesses that had good leadership with vision were able to make those changes on short notice.
Yes.
and find new avenues for their products or develop new products and services.
They can pivot. The ones that are creative and innovative, they can pivot. And I'm sure, during COVID, my former office and the Small Business Administration were really keeping an eye out and doing surveys and talking to small businesses and figuring out what was hurting them and figuring out ways that they could, change the policies or the regs or the rules to get them paid quicker or do things like that. And yes, you're right. It is, there are some people who tend to say, well, I don't want to award another contract, go to this big company, but then you pay the pass through. So, you really have to think through the strategy, and it doesn't always make sense to go directly to a small business, but there's a lot of times that it does. And the Navy just keeps awarding more and more dollars to small businesses, and they're delivering. So that's good.
Yeah. And when you talk about small business, what constitutes a small business? What would you say?
Yeah, I wish it was an easy answer, but there's a book about this thick of size standards. Okay. It's not, there's nothing easy. Okay. There's a book about that thick of size standards. And so in general, if you're selling supplies, the size standard is based on the number of employees. So for like manufacturing, I don't know, it could be 2,500 employees. For selling pens and pencils, it might be different. It's just like that. And then if you're selling services, it's usually based on the last 3 years of your average gross revenue.
Okay.
So, at one point for engineering services, it was 34.5 million. It's probably gone up now because they raise it from time to time with inflation. The SBA, the Small Business Administration, goes out and looks at all the different industries. They have a rolling thing where they look at them all and they change the size standards, but there's ones for some kinds of IT, it might be like 6 million. So it just depends. And then there's different kinds of small businesses, women-owned, small businesses, veteran-owned small businesses, service disabled, veteran-owned, historically underutilized business zone, companies that have their headquarters located in a hub zone. And then they also have to have 33% of their employees live in that hub zone. So those companies have to make sure that, when they're hiring people, that where they live, it's complex. It's not just.
So as complex as it is, I appreciate that the military, the government that has a lot of money to spend, is being intentional about finding those pockets of underrepresented folks.
Yes.
And helping develop them. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's really good. Well, I'm just going to put this image up here for a second because we are part of what we want to do is talk about this particular book, Step into the Spotlight, Expand Your Influence, and Attract the Right Clients. I love that part. I love attracting the right clients. That's really key, because if you're a business owner and you're trying to define who your client is, you also want to define who you don't want to work with.
That's true.
Because the wrong clients will take up more resources than they're worth and prevent you from doing the right stuff. So let's talk about the journey to get to the book.
Well, what happened is Colleen Biggs this book was compiled by her. So there's, I think, 12 different authors. And so she went out on LinkedIn and reached out to several different women and asked us if we wanted to be part of this book. And we just need to each write a chapter. And, so it can be daunting if you're going to write your own book, right? But in this case, I just had to write one chapter, which, actually I had to cut back what I submitted because they gave us all a certain, I can't remember what the word limit was, but a certain amount of word limit. So, this is the second book that I'm a contributing author on. So I want to kind of compare the two and kind of how we put them together. Like this book, Becoming a Govcon Expert, there's 6 authors there, and I wrote 3 chapters in this book. So anyone who wants to do government contracting might want to take a look at this one because it's a very basic, how to accelerate your success in government contracting. And it's very basic. So the way we did this one, we were all kind of in a mastermind, and we were going to be putting on a government contracting conference, and we timed the book to come out right before the conference. And so that was really helpful. And two of the guys, Mike Lejeune and Josh Frank, have published books before. These are self-published on Amazon. So they did all the heavy work. I submitted my chapter, they did the editing, and they did a lot of the heavy work. So I have yet to write a book where I had to do all of the heavy work, because when we did this book, we hired somebody to help with that. And there's companies out there that can help you with advising and coming up with the cover. Like in the first book that I mentioned, we had to come up with a cover. We had to do all that stuff. In this book, the contractor, the consultant that we hired did that for us and got the page limits right and the page numbers and stuff like that. So we basically to write our chapters. And what I like about this book is, even if you're not trying to attract clients per se, all of us want to kind of step into the spotlight and we are all like, have so much to give back in this world. And sometimes our minds hold us back, right? We hold ourselves back. And, what I liked, one of the first in the tab here, it says, our only limitations are those we set up in our own minds, Napoleon Hill. And so this is stepping into the spotlight of your life is what this book helps with too.
I love that. It is so true. I often say this is the greatest time ever to be alive. Yeah. Because if you want to write a book, you can do it. You don't need to find an agent or a publisher. You can do it. And if writing a full book is a little overwhelming, then find some other folks. I have actually in the back of the carousel, there's a publication that just came out that I collaborated on with Holly Jean Jackson and Matt Rouse. And so the three of us collaborated and published that. We had something that we wanted to say for small businesses. And so we put it together and published it. And now it's done and it's out there. Right. Yeah. And this is one of the things that when you have a book like this, it's there for generations. So that's my mom. That's my grandmom. This was the one that my great grandmother wrote. Right.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, actually, I didn't tell you this, Scott, but there's another book out there that I wrote with my daughter, and I wanted to learn about self-publishing. So what we did basically, it's a little kid's book. It's really short. I think it's even too short to buy the hard copy. You have to get it on Kindle, but it's about a bird in a tree and doesn't think that she can fly. And she's all nervous about flying, and her mind is holding her back. Right. And so it's like little Sally Lee in the tree or something like that. And we both did the watercolors for the book, and we came up with the words, and we just uploaded it. It was not that hard to do.
That's what I'm encouraging people. And that's, I want everyone that's watching either live or in the replay, wherever you're at, to realize, take what you have, set up an account at kdp.amazon.com. You download the Kindle Direct Publishing program. You put your book in there. You do a little bit of formatting, put a cover on it, and hit publish. It's not that hard.
Okay,
except your emotional barrier.
You're putting yourself in the spotlight. So you got to read this book first, right?
Yes.
You got to learn how to put yourself in the spotlight.
Yes.
Read this book, and then go step out and write your own book and publish it, right?
Tell us about your chapter in there. And this is the other thing that I love to recommend to people, and why they want to have a publication like this is because Emily Harman will always be now introduced as author of. And there's just a little bit more value to author, that we place on authors.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell us about your chapter. Tell us about
my chapter is entitled. It's entitled "Putting Yourself First," and it kind of tells the story about how once I graduated, I called my retirement a graduation because, like I said, I'm like, yes, I can do what I want, right? And it tells the story about how when I graduated, I was like, well, what is it that I want to do? What is it that I'm good at? I've been in the Navy working for the Navy since I was 18, going to college at the Naval Academy, and then going all the way through. And now I had an opportunity to really create something. And So it kind of tells a little bit about, the importance of really knowing who you are, knowing your values, knowing what you really like, noticing your feelings so that you know what feels good. I think I mentioned earlier that I stayed really busy to not feel my feelings. And I didn't intentionally know that, but and I just kind of thought that work was hard and you just had to push and just keep pushing through. And this is just how work is. I was asleep. And my son was an alcoholic. He still is. He's been sober 5 years. But I used to think,
Nice.
gosh, Will is drowning his feelings in alcohol. And I wasn't awake enough to realize that I was drowning my feelings in busyness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've woken up to that, and I've learned I wanted to just be, but I didn't know how do you just be? Because I remember growing up, it was always like, do something. You got to be doing something. You got to be accomplishing. You got to be busy. And that's at least what I heard or how I reacted. So it's about like discovering yourself and really learning that you can put yourself first. And I'm all about creating a life that you love living now, because within 3 weeks after I retired or graduated, my daughter called and told me that her dad had cancer, and was the dad of my 2 kids. And we had been divorced for like 25 years. And within 3 weeks after that, he was paralyzed in both arms because the kidney cancer had gone to his lungs and gone to his neck. His whole C5 vertebrae was cancer. He was paralyzed in both arms.
Yeah.
And 5 months later, he died on December 11th, 2019. And I saw him die. I helped take care of him with my daughter. I saw him die with regrets. I have his files here because I was the executor of his estate, and he had files on retirement. And he would usually send me emails. Oh, check out this article on retirement. Money for retirement, or what you want to do when you retire. And I know he was waiting. A lot of us wait until when this happens, or when that happens. How do we make our life more of something that we love right now?
Yeah, my father said that he met too many people who were wishing their lives away.
Yeah.
Right? They said, "Oh, I wish it was 5 o'clock. I wish it was Friday. I wish I was on vacation. I wish I was retired."
Yeah.
And I remember being at a networking event, and it was a beautiful spring day in May. Sun's out, trees are budding, and everything, just a beautiful time. And we're sitting at this table with a lot of folks. It was a fairly big networking event. And there was a student from the university there. And so it's May, so a couple of months until she graduates. And she was sitting at the table and she says, "Oh, I can't wait until I graduate." And I remember my comment to her was thinking about people wishing their lives away. I said, is this event not enough?
Yeah. It takes something has to click to wake you up to that, though. And it was Bruce dying that really woke me up to it. I mean, and I think also it was my retiring, graduating, thinking that now I would not be busy. Now I would not be stressed. And that didn't happen. So we tend to look at other people, or when this circumstance changes, or, this employee's not doing a good job, or this or that, we really I needed back then, and I still do now, to look at myself. So we need to look at ourselves. What can we change about ourselves? Because we can't change anybody else or anything else, but we can change how we react. And that's what I've learned. We have thoughts about people, situations, circumstances, and based on what we're thinking, that generates our feelings. My coach would ask, "Well, what do you feel about that?" I'm like, "I don't know. I know what I think about it." I was not in tune with my feelings. I couldn't name them. So I've really worked at that. And now I am more in touch with my feelings. So
because you are not alone. You are not alone.
No, I know.
It does take a coach. I want to let people know out there too that is that high level athletes, the world's best athletes with the most inherent skill, the natural ability, have coaches.
Yeah.
and they're not doing it because they're showing weakness.
Right. No,
It's
you're
it's
exactly
completely
right.
the opposite.
It's completely the opposite. Yes. And you know, I have strengths in certain areas. And
Hmm.
sometimes we think the things that come easy to us. So those are some things to, in my chapter, everybody who wrote a chapter has a giveaway at the end of the chapter. You can go to a website and download something. And one of mine is discovering your values. I knew what the Navy's values were, but
Hmm.
how often do we sit down and
Right.
come up with what our values are? And I know you have that planner.
Hmm.
How intentional are we at making sure we're accomplishing our goals? We set them and then we forget about them. We have these strategies at work. We're intentional at
Right.
work. We are not as intentional, most of us, with our lives.
Yeah, no, that's true, and there's research that shows that. It's interesting though when you talk about goals too, and that we set goals and we either achieve them or forget them. But this, I think, goes back to the self-care: is where do those goals come from? Because as you achieve goals, and speaking of the high level athletes, right? So
Yeah.
if we're looking at the world's best athletes, who their goal might be to stand on the top of the Olympic podium, hit that gold medal. And if that is all their life is about, when they achieve that, then their life is over. And we've seen a lot of tragic
Mhm.
stories about
Yes.
people that now what? Their life is over because they didn't have purpose.
Right.
And from purpose flow your goals.
Right. And that's what Russ Hedge talks about, purpose, and then knowing your values, right? Because when you're feeling uncomfortable about something or whatever, it's out of line with your values. And so
Mm.
I was just editing a Onward podcast episode where one of my guests was talking about values, and he's like, you can set your goals, but you could be putting your goal ladder up against the wrong wall because
Mm.
it's against a wall that's not aligned with your values.
Right.
So that's
Yeah. So
this
that introspection.
introspection. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
Yeah, it's so important, right? And that's part of what my chapter's about, because I
Yeah.
really hadn't. I was just so busy with raising kids and
Yeah.
putting them first and helping them through stuff that I hadn't made that time for. I hadn't put myself first. My chapter is called Putting Yourself First, and you can do it. You don't have to wait.
Yeah. So what are the other chapters? So
Okay, let
people
me
get the
just
book.
read some of these
What are we
other.
looking forward to?
Yeah, you can just read these headlines from the chapter titles and see what the book's about. Create who you want to become.
Hmm.
Your vision, your guide. Be seen, be heard, be visible. Monetizing your message from the stage. Putting yourself first. Believe you can and you will. The balancing act. Becoming an online authority. Step into your way. Embracing public speaking to grow your influence. And how living life without habits fixes everything. And then the last chapter is what's next. I wanted to highlight a story, though, that
Yeah.
Dr. Laura Cobb talked about in her chapter. I think it's in her chapter, but I've heard her say this. She's like, 3 frogs are on the log, right? They're on a log. One decided to jump. How many are left? 3. Because the
3.
one decided to jump, but he didn't jump.
Oh,
So
very clever.
that's with your goals, right? You decide you're going to do something, but you don't do it.
Mhm. Yeah. In his book Atomic Habits, James Clear has, to me, one of the best quotes from that book. It says that we don't rise to the level of our goals; we sink to the level of our systems.
Mhm.
So if you don't have a system in place to help you achieve your goals, doesn't matter what you set. They're meaningless. You didn't jump.
Yes. I can guarantee, I'm somebody who's accomplished, right? I wrote the job I had was the equivalent of a 2-star admiral. I'm somebody who's accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I hire a coach? I would not, I've invested in several coaches in the past 2.5 years. I would not be where I am today in terms of my confidence in coaching myself,
Mm.
in terms of having written books, in terms of hosting a podcast, in terms of my mindset on money. I never had to sell my services before. The Navy just told me how much I was valued. So it was a little scary putting myself in the spotlight and saying how much someone has to pay me to do something, because I always just got a check from the Navy. So, so many things that I hadn't had to do before that I didn't know. I went and worked with somebody. Sure, I can read it on the internet, but I heard somebody that helped me even more so, that accelerated my success. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw this back up because I want everyone to know. We are talking with Emily Harman here on Amazon Live. Step into the spotlight, expand your influence, and attract the right clients. This is a really good handbook, I think, for people that are thinking about making that transition from being a W-2 employee to being on their own and creating their own business.
Yeah.
Because there are so many different opportunities. Speaking is one of those. Being an internet expert, and here's the interesting thing about being an expert on something like speaking or on the internet. And let's just talk about Clubhouse, because that's a fairly new platform, and so there's opportunities there. And you don't have to be the expert by knowing everything. You just have to know more than a few people, right? And then you're seen as the expert.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I've been in Clubhouse. I haven't led a room, but I've been on the stage speaking in some rooms. That is one of the challenges, I'm sure of being an entrepreneur, is where do you spend your time, and how much time can you spend on all those different platforms? But definitely that's a great opportunity to practice your speaking and to step into the spotlight.
Yeah. And so and by doing that, you become an expert because there's somebody next to you that hasn't even heard of it, but could benefit from it.
Yeah.
And so by just telling them about it, you are seen as the expert. So it's actually not that hard to be an expert in some areas.
No, it's not. What I liked about the back of this book too, it says, have you ever, because I'm sure, nobody listening and watching has ever had this thought, who wants to listen to me, or what value can I bring?
Wow. Yeah.
Do you wonder how to strengthen your faith and believe in yourself so that you can thrive in life as you truly desire? If you desire more clients, more exposure, more success and happiness in your business or your life, pick up this book. So that is learn from others who have been there and learn from their advice, take what works and apply it to yourself.
Yeah. And it's amazing because what you believe about yourself will translate out. You can't hide it. No. So if you don't have confidence in yourself, you're going to have a hard time selling to someone else.
And I think too, this is something that I've discovered about myself. It just popped in my head. If you don't have confidence about yourself, then you're feeling pressure to make a sale. And when you have confidence in yourself, you're detached from the outcome, because you know that you can help the person and you can't make that person decide. And you don't want to make that person decide, because I've done that. I've let some people join my coaching program, some for free, some for a discount. Never again. They don't put in the effort that somebody who really invests because they want to invest in themselves. And so my lack of confidence, maybe in myself, or, let me just try, led me to do that. I wouldn't do that again.
Yeah. These are great lessons. And I encourage people to, we've got the book highlighted in the carousel, Step into the Spotlight, Expand Your Influence, and Attract the Right Clients. This is a collaborative effort. So a number of authors were assembled, and you kind of given your assignments. You write the book, do it as a mastermind type process, and then go to publish it. Now you've got this on the shelf, and you're going to go into the Amazon author page and get that set up, and you've got more books to add to it.
Right. So one other way of writing a book, especially, is for podcast hosts or even live stream hosts. and I've got like 160 episodes on my podcast.
Yeah.
And I haven't done this yet, but this guy that helped with this book, Michael Lejeune, he has published a book of his podcasts, and each episode it says, instead of chapter 1 or whatever, it's episode 1, episode 2, episode 3.
Right.
And so there's different ways that you could do that. You could take a transcript of the episode and kind of tweak it a little bit and make that the chapter. You could collaborate with the different guests, pick some of the top episodes, and you could ask each guest to write their own chapter, and they could decide to make it just a transcript of the episode, or they could write it like a summary of the episode and then what has happened since then, kind of thing.
Oh, right. Yeah. To kind of catch up, kind of this is TV shows have done this for years because people want to know, well, we saw this now it's 3-6 months, a year later. What happened? What
are they doing now?
That's a beautiful thought.
That's something that's on, that I'm going to do. But first off, I've got several like coaching courses that I'm taking. I want to finish those up, and there's only so much time in a day. And there's a lot of people on LinkedIn that will that have reached out to me and will probably reach out to some of the viewers saying, pay me this much money and I'll help you write your book. And I find you've got to really stick up for yourself, because I've had some that said, Emily, you said 3 months ago when we talked, you wanted to write your book, and now you're saying it's not the right time, kind of accusing me of blowing it off, or, because I know some people say they're going to, and then they never do it. But my point is that I am not, I'm retired. Number one. Number two, I am not going to push like that. I have priorities. I'm going to finish these coaching courses, and then I will write my book. So stick up for yourself and do what's right for you.
Yeah.
Putting yourself first, right? Setting boundaries.
I was going to create the 1440 Club, because 1440 is in a 24-hour day. There's 1,440 minutes. And there are, by the way, no rollover minutes. So if I didn't use 10 minutes today, I don't get 1450 tomorrow, right? And so the truth is that we use every minute of every day, but we don't always use them for what we would like to. Right. For the highest and best purpose.
Yes. And I just feel like right now, my highest and best purpose is not to add one more thing to my plate. Yeah. I'm actually taking mid-December to mid-January off. I'm not publishing podcasts. And it's not that I'm not working, right? I am going to be looking at my past year, looking at where I want to be in 3 years or 4 years from now, and what I want to do next year to accomplish that, looking at how I want to be, looking at what processes are working for me now and what things I'm doing are working and what's not, looking at what I could delegate more to free up more of my time. Where am I spending my time? These are things that require some kind of deep thinking, some getting in touch with your feelings. I've spent a lot of my life in my thinking head, and I want to get more in touch. I have gotten a lot more in touch with my feelings too. And what feels good to me. So these are all things that take time that a lot of us don't do. And it's really important.
I'm glad to hear that you're doing a really long-term plan and not just looking at 2022. Yeah. A year ago in the mastermind I'm in, Iron Sharpens Iron, we started a 3-year plan. So now we're 1 year into it. So we were looking at, we called it Come As You Will Be in 2023. So what do I want to look like at the end of 2023, 36 months out, in 5 different areas of personal, professional, financial, relational, spiritual, financial, so these 5 areas, what do I want to be? And so setting goals so that I have a direction beyond just the next 3 weeks.
That's exactly right. And then having that accountability of the people in your mastermind or of a coach, And it's not that you can't change where you're going to head in 2023, but so many of us say, yeah, I'll do that. And then the next year comes and you're in the exact same friggin' spot. I don't want to be that way. And I'm in a mastermind similar to that does the same thing. And we create like a snapshot. We get our whole body involved, all of our senses involved in coming up with what we're dreaming about. And I do this with my clients, and I'm getting ready to lead a program of that in this group that I lead called the Onward Movement. So if anyone wanted to join it, they could reach out to me, because it's going to start on Sunday, December 5th. But it's a snapshot of, once my dream is accomplished, or, by end of 2023, where I am, this is how I'm going to be feeling. I'm going to be imagining myself at this place. I'm surrounded by my family. I'm smelling the ocean, all these things. And you revisit that every day.
Yeah.
So that your subconscious mind helps you get it.
I should have thrown this in the carousel, but I just put this into the chat. There's a great book, and I don't know if you've read Tribe of Millionaires.
No, I don't
And
think so.
So Tribe of Millionaires is really, they use millionaires because that attracts people to buy the book. You don't have to be a millionaire or have a goal to be a millionaire, because that's not everyone's goal. But it really does outline the processes that you need to have that accountability in a mastermind group. And so it uses a fictional story of a man who's he's in a startup mode for a business. It's very challenging. His father dies that he didn't have a good relationship with, and he ends up going to this Tribe of Millionaires, which is really just a mastermind organization. And good things happen from that.
That's awesome. Is it in partly based on Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich a little bit?
I don't think we can get anything in a mastermind concept that isn't rooted in his book and in that concept. And that's another book that I recommend for people as well. But definitely, we want people to step into the spotlight and find your book, because I think this is, again, it's a good handbook, because there's a lot of things. They said when you go from working for somebody where you have a very defined role, as you said, the Navy told you a lot of things. You had your part to contribute, but you didn't have to worry about following up on payments and invoices and all that stuff, and making sure the computer systems worked and the branding was good and whatever. But when you work for yourself or you're in a small business, I said you're the C everything.
Yes.
You're the chief executive officer and the chief marketing officer. But a friend of mine said, "Oh, Scott, I thought you meant the C everything, SEE." And yeah, that's actually true. You do see
it.
Everything. Yeah, that's actually a very good description.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, well, yeah, when you made that transition, you made that when you graduated and you came into this new life, what were some of the things that really surprised you, both good and bad?
Some of the things, like, I knew that I'm not really, like, I really don't like attention to detail. And I took an assessment, it's called Emergenetics, which really showed that I'm in like there's 91% of the population likes data analysis and data more than me. Well, the Navy's all about data. And I used to be a contracting officer buying airplanes, having to keep detailed spreadsheets. No wonder that sucked all my energy. I can do it, but I don't like it.
Yeah.
So I resisted getting an accountant for a bookkeeper for a while. I have an accountant, but a bookkeeper. So I finally got a bookkeeper because I just wasn't keeping track of my income and expenses. And you really need to do that. Once we got it all together, I realized, wow, I haven't read that book. I haven't read that book. I haven't read that book. I keep ordering all these books and I haven't read them yet. And it just helps you get with your focus. And I've spent this much money, but this money's not coming in yet, And so it does take some money up front to get your business started, number one. Number two, I would say there's a lot of people telling you what to do. And someone might say, set your LinkedIn profile up this way. Someone else says, oh no, you should do it this way. Someone else says this, someone else says that. And you can get friggin' paralyzed with all these different ideas. So you've got to make decisions quickly and just start.
It's interesting when I was in banking, and I go into different branches, and we had the OPM, the Operations Procedure Manuals, right?
Yeah.
And I go into a branch, and they did something one way, and I said, "Oh, why do you do that?" Well, it's in the OPM.
Right.
I said, okay. I go to another branch, and they would do it very differently. And I said, "Well, why do you do that this way?" And they say, "Oh, that's the way we're supposed to do it. It's in the OPM." And so I can only imagine what it's like in the Navy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You're exactly right. I mean, you're exactly right. So, when you're starting your own business, just question why is somebody telling me this, and what feels, I would tell you, initially, earlier, I would say, and what do you think about it? But I would say, no, what feels right to you? Because we need to listen to our gut and our heart and our intuition. What feels right? We have our whole body is like a sensing mechanism, and we need to use it. It's not just our brain that we need to use. It's all other parts of our body as we make decisions and move forward. But the biggest thing is just do it. And, the day I graduated, the next day I published 7 podcast episodes. So when I was in my job, I was recording episodes and I was starting. So, I didn't really hold back. I mean, I got my you don't have to get your website up. I even started, when I started coaching, I mean, I did a lot of mentoring when I was with the Navy, mentoring employees and stuff, but coaching is different because it's more like, mentoring is like, how did you make it to that position? Let me tell you how. And it may not work for that person. Coaching is really asking the right questions to pull the answer out of the other person. So that takes some practice. And I wasn't really initially as confident in it as I am now. And, but I just started. I practiced with people. You just got to start. You're never going to feel ready.
Yeah, that's very true. I love that advice. So I'm going to encourage people, get the book. If you're thinking about starting a business, even a side hustle, and I believe everybody should have a side hustle, no matter what you're doing. And there's a lot of reasons for it, and I don't want to go into those today, but get the book because there's practical advice and there's additional information and help that you can get at the end of every chapter. And so make sure you take advantage of those. So, Emily, as we kind of get into the final part of the show, one of the things that is fun here on Amazon is that people are looking for the kind of the right tools to help them in their business. I like I like this microphone because it's got some style.
Yeah,
right?
I like that.
I do a lot of international broadcasts, and having the stars and stripes on there just kind of says, hey, we know what country Scott's coming from.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of fun, and it sounds good. So some people can get just a black microphone, and I may have one of those someday. But anyway, what are the things that you had to invest in tool-wise to help you? You said you were doing the podcast episodes as you were getting ready to head into retirement graduation.
Yeah. So I invested in the Yeti mic, and I have it here. I don't know if I should move it or hear it, but I have Yeti mic here.
Those are very good. I love I actually had a Yeti for a couple of years.
Yeah. And that's the thing with podcasting too, is like people will tell you need this and this and this and this. And I'm not really that, like, I just started and I don't have a lot of tech stuff. And you really don't need to. And so then I use my MacBook Pro. That's what I use. And then you can get different lights. I've got my light up there. That's really about all you need, except for some software. Like you have StreamYard. I have StreamYard. I think I'm thinking of switching to Restream, and then, there's quite a bit of books. In fact, I lead a group called the Onward Movement, which is a Facebook group. And the focus of that group is to embrace your encourage people to embrace their authentic selves and release the fear of judgment, so that they can create the life of their dreams with confidence, or step into the spotlight. And
Yeah.
I compiled a Onward Movement reading list in Amazon of all the books that I've read or am reading. Think and Grow Rich is one. The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles is another. There's just so many different books that I've read that I thought would be helpful to compile that list. So that's something I've done.
I think that's great. Is, just again, taking that time, as you mentioned, you'll be taking time off here in December and really focusing out. And I think it's really important before people jump into getting a website or setting up a TikTok account or jumping right into a podcast, to take a little bit of time and evaluate what is it that you want to do,
Right.
and what kind of impact do you want to have.
Yeah. And why do you, like you said, the impact, and why do you want to do it? I talk to some people who are, I'm going to sell something to the government. What are you going to sell? I don't know. What do they need? And that's not the way to go about it, because it's like, you're probably not going to be really passionate about what you're selling, and selling to the government is not a get rich quick scheme. It's very challenging. And
There's no get rich quick that's
there
legal.
isn't. And so, that's the other thing about, you asked, what have I learned? It didn't really surprise me, but it takes a lot of persistence to run your own company, and our minds can get in the way. And I took this coaching program by Shirzad Chamine. It's called Positive Intelligence. And I decided to become a coach of positive intelligence, because it's all about better understanding of how our minds do get in the way, and techniques that we can use, including an app on our phone, to help us not let that hold us back. Because I saw all these government contractors coming in and briefing me, and I saw the stress of doing business with the federal government. And now I've seen it on the other side, the stress of starting your own company. There are challenges, and you start to question yourself, and you've got to have a support group of a coach or a mastermind, or something to help you, because our minds can get in the way if we let them. Right.
Yeah, it's there was research from out of the Dominican University in California, and Gail, I'll think of her name in a moment here, when she did some research on goals, and the probability of achieving your goals was, she broke it down into 5 different things that improve the probability of achieving your goals. The first one was to have goals. Which seems kind of, like, well, of course, but many people don't. So have goals, write down your goals, develop a plan to meet your goals. And the 4th step was to tell somebody about your goals, because when you have to explain something, when you have to take and transmit that message, right, you formulate a better understanding for yourself.
Right.
But the 5th thing was to have somebody hold you accountable, to say, Emily, this is what I'm going to do by this time next week. And then you hold me accountable to that.
Yeah.
And each one of those 5 steps improve the probability. And so if you want to be successful, then seek out someone like Emily, to be your coach, to hold you accountable.
Definitely.
So what kinds of who would be a great person to seek you out, to have you as their coach?
Yeah. I would say, we're, as a coach, you're supposed to like identify your ideal client, and then all the coaches are like, yeah, but I could coach anybody. Okay. Well, I think that I know that my ideal client is somebody like me that is going through what I went through, a high achieving woman who has, probably they're an empty nester now. Their children are out of the house. They're have some time. They've lost themselves in all these responsibilities, and now they have some time, but they don't even remember who they are and what they want to do. And or a busy woman who is getting ready to retire, but is kind of like, I don't know what I would do when I retire, so I guess I'll just keep working. Those kinds of peaks, and people who want some accountability. And I do coach some people that lead companies that do business with the government. I do that too from time to time. Yeah.
I like this. have experienced, because we're at that point where we have one child who's graduated high school, and in the next few months he's planning on moving out, and so we'll be the true empty nesters.
Yeah.
And we're in that stage where we have a lot of friends that are in that area.
Mhm.
And what I found was the women, the wives that had some sort of a plan and a process that they started ideally a couple of years before they became empty nesters, and then were able to go full time into it, are much happier than the ones who it's like the children left, but they didn't have anything to backfill.
It's kind of like their purpose is gone. It can feel that way. Yeah. It's hard when your kids leave. Mine are 28 and 25, and my daughter used to live with me when I was stationed in DC, and she was like 21, and it was a fun time. I remember that, and now she's out in Colorado, halfway across the country, and I miss her. But it is very challenging, I think, especially for women.
So I would say so that if people are at that point, if you're becoming an empty nester, if you're looking toward that, or you're looking into retirement, don't wait till that happens. Get the book, get the contact, reach out to Emily, and start setting up that plan now for what you want to do. And so, Emily, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Connect with me on LinkedIn, or go to my website, which is my name, emilyharman.com, and you spell it Harman. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's perfect. So go to the website, find Emily on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. This has just been so much fun talking with you. I love collaboration. I'm all about collaboration, and I'm glad that that's how this particular book was written. And I look forward to seeing your author page with these other publications in there. Yeah. And what's next? What's coming up next for you?
Oh, what's next is I'm kind of rebranding my live stream Onward podcast, and that's something that I'm working on over the next year. I mean, between now and January, right? And like I said, I'm going to be kind of re-looking at things and coming up with what's next. But I think once I'm done with my certification courses in coaching, that's going to open up some more doors for me. Not that you can't coach without a certification, but it's harder to coach federal employees without a certification. I am going to be coaching some Custom and Border Patrol people, but so I think that'll open up some more doors. And then I really want to write a book. So that's the next thing, is my own book.
Good. And what's the thesis for that?
I'm leaning towards having it be about the podcast in some way, because my Onward podcast is about facing adversity and moving forward. And then I changed it to facing adversity, moving forward, and discovering ourselves along the way, because I was discovering myself through this journey. And everybody that I've interviewed on the adversity that they have faced, everyone says it was the best thing that ever happened to me, or I don't regret it, or, so you think when you're like in this really tough situation that's the end of the world, and it's not. And I want to encourage people through continuing to do live streams and then publishing it as a podcast, but also to write a book.
That's great. I saw a bumper sticker that said, God will only give you what you're prepared to handle.
Yeah.
And God must think I'm a real badass.
I think we all feel that way, especially with COVID.
There are times when it's that way. So, but Emily, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your story and the book. And I'll just put this back up here again for a moment, because I want everybody to click on it in the carousel. It is highlighted in the carousel. Step into the spotlight, expand your influence, and attract the right clients. This is a collaborative book, and you have a generous heart. So thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate being on your show today.
All right. Hang out in the green room for a moment. I'll be right back. So thank you for everyone that watched, and click on the book. Take a look. There's a number of authors. It is really going to be a great journey. If you're looking at your own business, improving the one that you have, starting your own, it's a great thing. So with that, we're going to sign off from this Amazon Live. Thank you to everybody that watched, and we will talk to you all soon. Have a fabulous day.